I am Rebecca, 24 years old. I worked as an editor at a publishing company. I've always lived at home, but I moved out when I started junior college. Now, I live alone in an apartment and commute to work by train every day. It may seem like I'm having a fulfilling and enjoyable adult life, but ever since I can remember, I've been troubled by the abnormal behavior of my toxic mother. My father runs his own company, so I think our family was relatively well off. He has traveled frequently for business both domestically and internationally, often being away from home for extended periods. However, I believe our relationship has been good. He would often keep in touch while on his trips and always brought back souvenirs, showing his thoughtful nature. I have one older sister, and our relationship is not bad at all. Unlike me, she is talented in both academics and sports, but she never flaunted her abilities. She was a broad-minded sister to everyone, treating everyone equally with kindness. She guided me with both strictness and kindness when needed. I trusted her more than my mother. When my mother was about the same age as I am now, she married my father, who is 10 years older than her. My mother hails from a rural island and harbored a strong desire to live in the city. Right after graduating from high school, she left home and started working at a cabaret. Then she met my father, who was a customer, and they got married out of love. I have never visited my mother's hometown, and I have only met my maternal grandparents a handful of times. My mother expresses an extreme aversion to maintaining any relationship with her hometown, often stating that she never wants to return there again. Her feelings towards the city aren't just admiration, they are intense and almost obsessive, far beyond mere longing. Perhaps it was the accumulation of an inferiority complex towards her hometown that caused my mother to develop such a distorted personality. As a result, I became the target and have suffered from her harassment for many years. Compared to my exceptionally capable sister who excelled in everything, I was average in both academics and sports. My complex about this started when I was in first grader elementary school, triggered by words my mother said at that time.
Your sister excels at everything, but you don't stand out at all.
Even though I was little, I vividly remember my mother said so, and it hurt me deeply. Around that time, my father started traveling more frequently for business, leaving the house often. Taking advantage of his absence, my mother began comparing my sister and me, constantly judging and ranking us against each other. She doted on my elder sister, sending her to cram schools and enrichment lessons to nurture her talents without hesitation. Although she was generally fist-tighted, she considered the expenses for my sister's activities as an investment in her future and spared no expense in supporting her. As a result, my sister consistently excelled in both sports and academics, effortlessly gaining admission to a prestigious university. Today, she works at a top-tier company that everyone knows. I was constantly compared to my sister. No matter how hard I tried to earn her approval, I never achieved the results my mother desired.
You're average unlike your sister, so you don't need to waste your effort.
She didn't even acknowledge my efforts. I was sent to a cram school chosen by my mother for all 3 years of middle school, and she didn't let me take enrichment lessons, unlike my sister did. Instead of that, she often made me do house chores like laundry and cleaning. Even when I tried my best at these unfamiliar tasks for her, she never thanked me. Feeling sorry for me, my sister always stood up to our mother, telling her that what she was doing was wrong. Each time this happened, it would lead to a big argument between my sister and mother. As a result, it became a routine for me to reassure my sister, saying I'm fine. Being discriminated against by my own mother was tough, but what I couldn't bear more was when my sister and mother argued, making the atmosphere tense. My sister would often apologize to me with a pained expression in response to my words. I believe my sister, caught in the middle between my mother and me, also went through a lot of pain. I tried to talk to my father about it several times, but I always ended up thinking I should just endure it, so in the end, I couldn't bring myself to tell him. Our family had maintained this delicate balance for a long time, but eventually, the suppressed anger towards my mother exploded. I had endured it all for the sake of my beloved father and sister, but my determination crumbled when faced with my mother's unbelievable actions. When I was in my second year of high school, my mother forcibly sent me abroad to study. I resisted this strongly, but my mother insisted on it, and I found myself living in a foreign country where I didn't know anything for about a month and a half. The host family I stayed with during my homestay were all kind people, so I managed to get by. However, I was extremely upset by my mother's actions, and upon returning home, we had our first argument. That soured a relationship with my mother. Since then, I have tried to keep my distance from her as much as possible. I chose to attend a junior college with student dormitories to avoid seeing my mother. I worked tirelessly through part-time jobs while receiving minimal financial support for tuition and living expenses. After graduation, I started working, and I've continued this way until now. Despite living separately from home, my mother still contacts me from time to time, often saying hurtful and sarcastic remarks. To be honest, it has been quite exhausting to deal with. And then, I got married to my boyfriend whom I had been dating since junior college. When I reluctantly went to announce our marriage, persuaded by him, she made numerous sarcastic remarks about both him and me. However, he understood the relationship between my mother and me. Despite all that, he expressed his desire to marry me. Since I could foresee conflicts between my mother and his parents, we decided not to have a wedding ceremony, and I chose to live with his family after we got married. One day, shortly before my wedding, I had a chance to meet with my sister and we started talking about our mother and past events. When we talked about how different we are as sisters, my sister suddenly said,
"Are you really my sister? We should get a DNA test." Ha!
"That's terrible." I immediately refused her suggestion, but she insisted with a serious expression that it might be better to clarify things before my marriage.
Looking back, Mom's favoritism towards me has been extreme. I've had a feeling for a while, but we might not be blood related.
I got persuaded by her words and immediately went to the hospital with her to get a DNA test. On the day we received the test results, the doctor told us,
"You two are not blood-related sisters."
It turns out that my sister and I are half-sisters, with different fathers. My sister is undoubtedly the biological child of our mother and father, but it seems I have a different biological father. I wanted to believe in the slim chance of something different, so I exclaimed in surprise at the doctor's words. "Huh?" But my sister, sitting next to me, frowned and quietly murmured,
"I knew it."
"So, that's the reason why my mother dislikes me." I felt sad, but at the same time, I felt anger, which I suppressed all these years, starting boiling. My sister suggested we tell our father immediately and confront our mother. However, I felt that a simple approach wouldn't satisfy me, so I told my sister I had a better plan in mind and decided to act on it right away. On the day my father was due to return from his business trip, my sister, mother, and I were waiting in the living room. My sister and I took the day off work, and we made sure my mother didn't leave the house by telling her we had something important to discuss. We hadn't given her any specific details, so she had been irritated since morning. After a while, my father came home, looking stressed. After a brief greeting, he sat down and looked at my sister and me. Taking this as my cue, I placed the paper detailing the DNA test results on the table. As my mother read through it, I could see her face getting stiff. "Can you explain what this means?" I asked her. She turned pale and gingerly looked at my father, not at me. It became clear that she had been hiding the truth not only from my sister and me but also from him.
There's a deeper reason behind this.
Glancing at my father's expression, she began to explain. According to my mother, she ran into her ex-boyfriend by chance in town and had a one-night stand under the influence of liquor. She had no feelings for her ex, but she found out she was pregnant and couldn't bring herself to have an abortion, so she went ahead and gave birth. Watching my mother desperately trying to justify herself, I wanted to throw up. It gave me the creeps that she was making up a story, playing the victim. We remained silent while she was talking, and when she finished, my father finally spoke up with a solemn voice.
"So, are you done making excuses?"
My father's cold voice, unlike anything I had heard before, made my mother flinch. After giving her a sharp glance, he turned towards my sister and me.
"I'm sorry for putting both of you through such pain."
My father apologized in a strained voice, and then began to speak slowly. As it turns out, my father had a vague suspicion that I might not be his child when my mother was pregnant with me. However, rather than confronting her about it, he chose to pretend not to notice and kept silent about his doubts. It was a tough decision for him because a divorce would mean taking our mother from my sister and me. However, the other day, after hearing about the DNA test results and how badly my mother had treated me all this time, he deeply regretted his decision at that time.
"If I had faced your mother back then, maybe Rebecca wouldn't have had to suffer so much,"
he said with a pained expression. He seems to be full of regret, but I can't blame him. Even though we're not biologically related, I know the love that my father has shown me all these years is genuine. When I told this to him, he lifted his head and looked at me. He was brimming with tears.
That's right. Even if we're not blood related, we're still family. Let's put everything behind us and get along from now on.
Having watched the exchange between my father and I, she spoke nonsense. Upon hearing her insensitive remark, my father glared at her and expressed his outrage.
"Don't be ridiculous. We're not done yet."
Yes, that's right. A one-night stand with your ex? Don't lie about it. When I said that, following my father, her mouth twitched slightly, and she murmured,
What?
When I told my father about the DNA test the other day, he said he had an idea who my biological father could be and reached out to that person. Instead of just telling my mother, which she might cavil or evade, we decided to gather testimony from that person to ensure my mother couldn't explain away. Apparently, my biological father is not someone my mother referred to as an ex, but rather one of the customers at the cabaret where my mother used to work, and he was also drinking buddy with my father. According to information gathered by a private investigator through acquaintances, my biological father lives in a neighboring state, where he lives with his parents and works in the family business. When my father asked my biological father about the past, he confessed that he had been in an affair with my mother even before my older sister was born. Furthermore, it came to light that when she became pregnant with me, she extorted money from my biological father by threatening him. She dumped my birth father, who was just a humble businessman, calling him a poor man, and falsely claimed that I was the child of a company owner and has lived comfortably with this lie until today. when I played the recorded conversation with my biological father for my mother.
I don't know. This is a lie.
She repeated, making desperate excuses with a weak voice.
I can't believe you're such a corrupt woman. We're getting divorced.
My father said that to her without mercy.
I'm sorry. Please, just spare me from divorce.
She clung to him desperately. Furthermore, I told her without mercy too. I'll also have my family demand compensation from you. Mother froze at my words.
Your family?
After we got engaged, my mother apparently demanded a betrothal money from my fiancé's parents. Initially, she agreed to decline it, but she suddenly changed her mind and insisted on it again from them. His parents tried to settle things amicably, but my mother persistently called them and sometimes even showed up at their house. She even hurled abusive words like crazy at his parents on their doorstep, so they had to call the police to have her kicked out. These strange behaviors of my mother sent his mother over the edge into depression, and she came down from stress. When I heard about it recently, I apologized to him and his parents, and suggested claiming compensation from my mother. Although they were hesitating, they decided to claim compensation from her. When I told her about it, she lashed out at me in anger.
Family. Are you taking their side over mine?
Of course. Because it's 100% your fault. Don't try to act like a mother now. I said it to her without hesitation. My mother started to lose her temper at my attitude, but my sister intervened calmly.
It serves you right.
She reproved our mother with those words. Finally, my father delivered what would likely be the most painful punishment for my mother.
I've told your parents everything. They've agreed to take responsibility and bring you back to your hometown.
In other words, my mother is forcibly returned to her parents' home on a distant island. I heard that my mother's hometown is even more rural than I had imagined, with most people in the village living a self-sufficient lifestyle. Her parents are no exception to this. For my mother, who absolutely hates rural areas, returning to her hometown would be the ultimate humiliation. When my father told her about deportation, her face turned even paler than when she received the divorce announcement.
Are you joking? I can't bear to live way out in the country. Please forgive me.
She pleaded tearfully with my father and me for forgiveness. You forced me to study abroad even though I didn't want to. I pushed her away and said with resentment, recalling the bitter feelings from that time. She desperately apologized, repeatedly promising to change and expressing deep regret for her actions. However, no matter how many times she apologized, her words fell on deaf ears for us. My father said calmly,
Pack your things and leave by the end of this week. We will contact you later about the compensation.
Upon hearing this, it seemed my mother realized that our feelings wouldn't change, and she sat down weakly on the spot. Isn't this a great opportunity to change your life? Good luck. I looked down at her and said to her the exact words she had said to me when she forced me to study abroad. She cried, sobbing uncontrollably, but it was too late to regret it now. She must pay for her mistakes, in the form of compensation. Afterward, it seems my mother persistently resisted, not wanting to leave. However, she was forcibly dragged away by her parents, whom my father had called, and taken back to her hometown. My mother continued to mutter resentfully under her breath until the end, but when my grandfather scolded her, she quieted down and fell silent. My grandfather was a former teacher and quite strict, so he will probably re-educate her. I heard that my mother is living a very modest life on her hometown's remote island, which is a stark contrast to her previous life as the wife of a company owner. Moreover, in such a small community, her past actions have quickly become widely known, and she is feeling quite uncomfortable and embarrassed. She couldn't pay off the compensation with her savings and even after selling household items, so it seems she's working at the only shop on the island, asking for favors. On her days off, she crosses to the main island by boat for day labor to pay off the compensation in installments. As for me, I successfully married my fiancé and started living with his family. I continue to work at the publishing company as before, and I'm enjoying happy days with my kind in-laws and husband. I frequently keep in touch with my father and sister, and we are currently talking about going on a trip together, including my husband's parents. I've spent my life being constantly manipulated by my mother, but from now on, I want to live with my own will and develop the strength to follow through. I'll live in a way that one day, my future child will be proud to call me their mother.